What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yeah.
So business as usual for Alexander Volkanovski, and I think the look on Yair Rodriguez's face said it all after the fight last night. Volk is levels above everybody at 145. When you talk about his technical proficiency, his strategy, the way he prepares for a fight, even down to that finishing sequence where he realized immediately that he had Yair hurt. He didn't try to rush in. He was calculated. He feinted to see where Yair would go with his hands. It was a beautiful shot selection to a double leg takedown and a ground and pound finish. That's the highest level that it gets in MMA. That is a true mixing of the martial arts, and Alexander Volkanovski is firing on all cylinders right now.
I couldn't agree more. Alexander Volkanovski is the greatest pound-for-pound fighter on the planet right now, and I think he's probably the best fighter we've ever seen do it. The sport's always evolving, and he seems to be at the very top of the current state of MMA. And if you were to take a fighter and you could morph them into any size to fit the weight class, accordingly to who they would be fighting in, I think he would beat everybody else's champion in all the other divisions in the UFC. Now, when you give up a little bit of size, you can see things happen like him go the distance with Islam Makhachev. But as far as 145 goes, he made the call out after he fought Islam. He's like, look, 45 featherweights, y'all better get ready because I'm coming back and nobody's going to hold a chance against me. And boy, was he right. You know, everybody thought for years and years that Yair would be one of those guys that is too tricky for anybody to deal with. And nobody's going to have enough time in an 8-week, 10-week camp to really prepare for it. And even if you do study all of his film over and over and over again with the best teams in the world, you can't find the bodies to emulate his style. You can't find people that can do what Yair does at that kind of level. And, you know, I don't know who Volkanovski brought in for this camp. I know the commentator said he was using Blood Diamond as well as some other bodies that were sort of similar and styles that were sort of similar, but nobody's like Yair Rodriguez. And to see him know exactly what was going to come throughout the entire fight against Yair Rodriguez shows the level of IQ Volkanovski has, shows the game plan that he came in with. And then when you talk about that finishing sequence, it was just the chef's kiss after a perfect, flawless performance.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And it showed how he prepared for Islam Makhachev when he got back out there and took on somebody who was a lesser grappler like Yair Rodriguez. Volk was good before the camp leading up to the first Makhachev fight. There will probably be another one, especially after that performance.
For sure.
But after that first camp, he came back down to 145 with a vengeance and with some much improved grappling and takedowns. And so Volkanovski was complete prior. He's even more complete now. And I think you said it best. He's probably the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. And if he were to be 6 foot tall like Islam Makhachev and have the same frame, I think that fight would have gone very different. If he had a 265-pound frame and he was 6'4", I think his skills match up with John Jones and could potentially, he could beat the greatest of all time in Johnny Bones. So I literally can't say enough good things about Alexander Volkanovski. Now, there's a lot of talk about this very young prospect, Ilia Topuria. He is an excellent fighter. He looked very good against Josh Emmett. He's young. He's got the look. He's good everywhere. Good mix of submission and knockout victories. He's exciting. All signs point to this guy being the next big thing at 145. But after last night, I say not so fast. You know, everybody's ready to appoint Ilia Topuria as the new guy who's going to take on the featherweight GOAT and dethrone him. And I don't think when you compare what Alexander Volkanovski did last night against what Ilia Topuria did against Josh Emmett, that they are even on the same ball field. Alexander Volkanovski has a substantially higher skill set, fight IQ, and everything across the board. And I think if they put Ilia in there with him quickly, which is what it seems like he's pining for, it's going to be a big mistake for his career because he's going to get finished pretty early, just like we saw Yair, and then it's going to be back to the line for him until Alexander Volkanovski decides to either retire or move up to complete the rest of his career at 155. Now, we do need some fresh blood. You know, Volkanovski's cleaned out the division, and when you're so good, that's kind of the curse, is that nobody wants to see you fight people you've already beaten before. So I do get the need to have a new face in there, but everybody's real hot on Topuria beating him right now, and I'm just not there.
Yeah, I think after last night, it's going to be hard to convince me that anybody on the planet that can make 145 pounds could even, go the distance with Volkanovski at this point. And he said he did need to take a bit of time to do a surgery on his arm, and maybe it's not at 100% right now. And I think that Topuria should probably stay active if he wants to, increase his skills and get better and get more known worldwide before he goes in there with Volkanovski. Because when you're talking about a 26, 27-year-old guy, yes, they're very good, but they haven't really entered their prime yet. So he's got another 18 months until he fully gets into his prime. And I predict that Volkanovski won't fight again until sometime in the first or second quarter of 2024.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, Ilia Topuria cannot wait around and just sit around for a title shot. 145 is always ever changing. And, you never know who's going to jump in, who's going to win a fight emphatically. And we don't really go off of a rankings-based thing 100% of the time, right? We just saw Duplessis, who was number 5, take on Robert Whittaker, who was number 2. Now they're going to switch spots, and we'll see him move into that title shot. But Aljamain Sterling came out and said, after my fight with Sugar Sean, I'm moving up to 145. And if he gets his hand raised against Sugar Sean, they're not going to make him do any heavy lifting at 145 before he gets a title shot, which would push Ilia Topuria back because gold always takes seniority. And I think if Aljamain Sterling comes up and wants to fight Volkanovski, the UFC would be very interested in doing something like that. You got these 2 champs and somebody's going for champ status. And you're talking about 2 major guys in the sport at this point. I just think that Ilia Topuria has got to stay active if he wants a shot against Volkanovski. That being said, I don't think he stands a chance against Volkanovski.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think Volkanovski's next fight is going to be against the winner of Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev. I think he's going to have surgery. That's going to give time for the Abu Dhabi card to happen. The winner, which will likely be Islam, will have a chance to heal up. And then sometime quarter 1, quarter 2 before Ramadan of 2024, they're going to get in there and have their second fight. That first fight was too good not to run it back again. And so that may create a situation where they do an interim sort of deal at 145. Maybe Aljo takes on Topuria for an interim belt, and that would entice him. But even if they don't put an interim belt on the line, because there was just an interim champion in Yair Rodriguez, and we saw what happened last night, maybe the UFC is not so inclined to just throw the interim back out there again at featherweight. Whatever the case may be, Topuria needs another fight. One, because he needs to continue to grow and evolve and take on the best competition. Maybe somebody like an Arnold Allen or somebody like that, Max Holloway, if he does decide to stay at 145 rather than move up to 155. But I think it would be a mistake for him to try to wait out and get Volkanovski, because I think he'll cool off, and then he'll get in there and he'll get finished, and then he'll cool off completely. So for a young, hot prospect, I think he needs to be active right now, and I don't think right now is the time to take on the GOAT in Alexander Volkanovski.
Yeah, I agree. And Volkanovski's super active these days. I mean, he's constantly fighting, and he seems like the kind of guy that if he were to get 2 belts in 2 different divisions, he would be able to bounce back and forth like Amanda Nunes was at one point. But yeah, I don't think Topuria needs to sit still and do absolutely nothing. I think he needs to keep evolving, keep getting better, because the one thing you don't want with you when you step in there with Volkanovski is a bit of ring rust.
That is for sure.